Thank you, everyone, and good morning to all. Last year, I chaired the session on rhino. I think I sat over there, and I had a lot more hair. It was a lot more blonde, not grey. It's an extremely difficult thing to work on, is this poaching of rhino. But what I'd like to do is try and take you and give you a synopsis of where KZN is at the moment. In terms of the national figures, we're standing right now at on the 5th of November. As you can see, we're sitting at 637 for the Kruger National Park. It's over and above there. In KZN, we're actually sitting at 80, and the total is 969 animals as of the most recent figures. More importantly, what is happening in terms of the province, this is numbers of rhino poached per day. We're sitting at about 2.97 for South Africa, and in KZN we're sitting at about 0.25 rhinos shot per day. We do use this as an indicator. It's one of the indicators, and I'll show you a few more indicators that we're trying to use. One of the key ones is the percentage of rhino poached per population, and I'm very happy to see that Richard actually looks at that perspective as well. In terms of the trends, as you can see, very similar. This is in KZN. We're sitting at 80 right now. But more importantly, here is a picture of which protected areas have been affected by poaching, the individual game reserves. Our most prolific state protected area has been Ezemvelo, where we've lost 21 rhino to date. The other significant is the private sector. The whole of 2013, they lost 14 animals. They're sitting at 24 right now, and you'll see we've calculated that difference in a little bit more detail later on. Umfolozi sitting at 10, Tembe sitting at 5. That was one of our key areas last year. In terms of losing animals, we're sitting at 5 this year, and some of them were actual accidental poaching, such as from snaring. And of course, in Ndumo, we're sitting at 2. But I will go to a little bit more detail into that when we have a look at the population trends of KZN. We do measure our poaching rate in terms of total population. We've set ourselves a goal of 2% of total population. To keep it under that. At the moment, we're sitting at 2.05. Just a couple of days ago, we were sitting at about 1.8. So this game changes overnight. And you can say you're doing well, but then all of a sudden you're on the other side of the fence. So it's extremely volatile to the poaching. So we're sitting at about 2.5% in terms of the black rhino. We're sitting at 2.62, which is also we're looking at 2%. In terms of the KZN figures, year on year, we're sitting at 80, as I said. This time last year, we were sitting at 76. This is about a 2 or 3 day difference. So I've just calculated the thing is to the closest possible date. Here, 67 white rhino, 68 this time, and you can see the increase in the numbers of black rhino. Now, when they poach animals, it's not I'm going to shoot a black rhino or I'm going to shoot a white rhino. It's just the first animal that they get. We've had a number of accidental poaching in terms of snaring of black rhino, and that's added to our increase there. The state parks, Ezemvelo state parks, we're sitting at 55 this year. We're sitting at 62. Here's the difference here, where this is virtually double this year. We've put a huge amount of effort into our state parks. I'll show you some of it a little bit later, but we haven't ignored the private sector. We've certainly tried to make sure that they receive our information, and I'll go into that a little bit more later on. But somehow we are getting our private parks are being targeted in another way. What we do is we try and concentrate on firearms recovered, because that's the weapon that is used. So all our disruption operations are focused at firearms recovery, and you can see we have an increase. Some of the arrests, there is a issue around that, which you'll see a little bit later, but we're sitting at about the same. But here's the critical part where we focus our intelligence on firearm recovery, high caliber firearms that are used in rhino poaching. The one element that we have thought about, if we take the firearms out, maybe they go to another method, which is a very serious consequence if they do. There's other methods such as poisoning and so forth, and we have picked up information that they would go to or could go to poison. National figures, that's what they were sitting at this time last year. This is information at time of death. We try and estimate the time of death because, as you know, sometimes a carcass lies in the field for a number of days. We try and look at our trends. This is 2014, and as you can see, these huge spikes and dips are there. At the moment, we haven't drawn the linear for this year. This is the linear for 2012, 2013, and then, of course, 2014, we'll see what the linear comes out at. But this is to give us an actual indication of when the animals were poached. So some of the animals lie in the field for 3 to 4 months, but this will give you an actual trend of when the animal was killed. So if you're looking at October, November, that's when there's a key time when a lot of poaching activity is taking place. This information is also based on time of death. This line here is rhino poached per week, and this is for Ezemvelo, and this is for the private. So this difference here is indicating that we've got a problem in the private areas, which we are trying to address right now. In terms of our population, these are the population. This is the black rhino. This is total rhino population. Of course, that's the white rhino. And as you can see, there is, and that's the point that we're trying to keep poaching rates down below 2%. This, I just thought I'd like to point out very clearly is that this is the white rhino figures, and this is the black rhino figures or population figures. But what you can see here is that there's, in terms of state, there is a growth in white rhino and so forth. But what's happening here is this growth rate in terms of black rhino in private areas. We really believe that a program like the BREP program, which is expanding on the land to accommodate rhino, is proving hugely successful. Here, we're not getting that growth because we're not moving those animals to new areas. And what we think is happening here, and we've got to look at it in more detail, is that in terms of poaching, it'll get down to maybe what we can term as a commercial poaching rate, where it'll get below a point where the risk is too great at the time spent in the reserve to poach an animal. So the risk becomes 5 days instead of 2 days to find an animal. If you spend 5 days there, the rangers have got more chance of finding you. So there is this risk rate. And what happens is once it gets to below that, they seem to move on to another game reserve. Now, what we do is we won't restock that area. We'll leave it as it is, because the rangers say, "Sure, I'm good now. Please leave me alone. Don't bring any more." So it's something we've got to try and deal with at some stage of our strategy and how we deal with it. And I think a clear indication is this black rhino growth in black rhino here, and that the WWF Black Rhino Range Expansion Program is working. And the other point to this is that not only then are you getting your poaching rate going up, but you're getting your population potential growth coming down. So you've got what they call maybe as a double whammy. What do? In late 2013, I had a look at the structure that we had in the province. One thing that came very clear to me to get the various state agencies involved, we had to make it official. So what we did is we went to a thing called National Joints, and we said, how are you dealing with the National Rhino thing? And there was an instruction sitting at the national level in 2011 for all provinces put what they call a provincial priority committee on rhino poaching. So that's the first thing we went and did in about September, October last year. That has now been formalized. All the state agencies are now members of that. We have our Rhino Security Committee here, which is a Ezemvelo driven thing for our reserves. But what this does, it brings all the agencies together and they drive the operations through what we're calling now a Joint Operations Command. Now, one of the most critical things about this is they've got an ICC. It's not the International Convention Center, it's the Intelligence Coordinating Committee. Now, for those that don't know, only 3 state agencies are allowed to actually gather intelligence. That's your SAPS, State Security Agency, and your SANDF. And that's the core of that. And all our intelligence is going into a single thing. Now, there's a huge amount of distrust in amongst all these intelligence people. This one doesn't trust that one doesn't trust this one. Sierra de Lan and Generations have got nothing on this bunch. So that's one of the key places. And what we did, strategically, we said, okay, we will keep it in a single place. And that we have done in putting up a single place. And it's not held with SAPS. It's not held with State Security Agency. It's held with Ezemvelo because we have got the invested interest in the rhino. So that's what we've done. It's a little bit different to the rest of them. Some of them haven't, some of the provinces haven't got those set up. Some of them haven't got the structures. But we're trying our best to move this structure along in this province. What that does then, it gathers information and converts it into operations. So if we have a certain person that we've identified, we have enough information, the information that there's a firearm there, we will react on that. And that will be reacted by the joint forces of the province. So it's not gathering Mr. A and Mr. B, and, oh, have you got a gun, have you got this? No, it's not. It's official, it's done in terms of the law. We do have a seizure and search, we have search warrants, and off we go. So we're trying to really make this professional. One of the areas that we've failed is that our investigations. And if you look at our data, most of the arrests are on level 1. Very, very few, only very recently has it gone above level 1. Level 1 is the shooter coming in and poaching the animal. This is our data for 2012, 2014. These are the number of rhino we've lost to poaching. This is the arrests that we've done, is the greenest 5% of that. Only 2% have we had successful convictions. So we got this huge problem, and please, this is not the data that we go out and we arrest people in their houses, not in the game reserve. These are lost animals. How many have led to an arrest? 5%, and then 2% of that is a conviction. So it's very, very small. And what we've done now is we've tried to make sure that all our detective prosecution agencies come together, and we're trying to make sure that we're driving our prosecutions and our investigations through that forum. In terms of our overall security and intervention program, we're looking at a number of areas. We're saying it's not only law enforcement. What happens, and I found in the what do you call it in the rhino world? Let's call it a rhino world because it is a different world. There's a lot of egos and there's a lot of big people in this rhino world. And a lot of it just boils around intelligence-driven things like, oh, I know so-and-so's involved, and oh, that person's involved. So it gets very, very complex in that world. But it's actually a little bit bigger. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to get these key areas where we want to focus on. And one of the areas is that we try and do special operations, which are disruptive. So we want to disrupt them. We disrupt their routes. We disrupt their operations. We try and take their guns away. It's difficult to get guns. We try and find out where they're getting the ammunition from, their silencers, and so forth. So we try and disrupt them. Excuse me. The other one we do is we try and make it more difficult for them to get in. Okay, thanks. And then we move it from there to say, right, if they're disrupted, difficult to get in, and it makes their risk go higher. The other one, of course, is the awareness. where we try and focus in on areas where there are high poaching rates into those schools and communities. These are our key areas. Obviously, these are the corridors. This is mainly shooting. Here in the Midlands, we mostly had darting, but we believe that the syndicate that was just arrested in Gauteng has now addressed a lot of these issues here in the Midlands. This is just a security assessment that we've done for the BREP sites. This was presented yesterday, but we do it for all reserves, and we've just started it for the private reserves because of this gap that we're finding. And it's basically a robot document to say, look, what's good? If you go back to the crime prevention, a good reserve is all green and all yes. So then they could have the slightest of risk to thing. These red areas obviously then are indicators. The other area that we've had a look at is the border. It's to say, well, why lock our front door when the front gate is open? And it is a very critical problem. Almost 70 kilometers with the Kaiser Den border. There's 37 potentially illegal border entries and so forth. And in that, we got situations where this is a drain. The fence goes on top, the drain is open. This fence is completely flat. Here you can see they've got a turning circle. So it's a drop off and go, and of course there's the border coming through there. And what other way have we got in our way forward? Operation Wolverine, that was an operation that was originally driven out of KZN that involved the arrest of those 10 people in Gauteng. We're trying to revise our value chain. We're trying to make sure who plays what role. How can we disrupt into each of those roles? Our intelligence, we want to make sure that it's countrywide. We're trying to engage with the rest of the setups. In terms of our information, we have now got a computer program, notebook analysis, that links up our suspects, and we can analyze that. And then, of course, we do want to make sure that our protected areas have the resources and the ability for us to assist the private areas in amongst them. We don't want to go into their reserves and patrol their areas, but we want to make sure that we disrupt the people because they travel between the thing. And the other last bit is that we do find that the poachers, the minute we get on top of them, they change. So they're very dynamic. They don't have to ask for board permission or CO permission to change. They just change. We got a bit more of a complex system. So that's all. Thank you very much.